Her death was a tragedy which drew significant media attention at the start of the century, the year 2000. It was a tragedy riddled with incidents of kidnapping, ransom, intense police investigation, multiple arrests, killing of witnesses, court case delays, and it was the tragedy from which the Joel Andem gang came to prominence. In this video, I look back at the kidnapping and murder of Jamaican businesswoman Sylvia Edwards. I am Nigel D. Salmon, and this is Jamaican Chapter. When 48-year-old Jamaican businesswoman Sylvia Edwards woke up on Monday, July 31, 2000, it was for her just another day. She went through her regular morning routine. Then after 9 a.m., she got ready to leave her house in Plantation Heights in the parish of St. Andrew. What she did not know was that there was a group of men patiently waiting for her to leave the house. She had become the target of their criminal plot, the plot to kidnap her. The men were determined. They were in a black Mitsubishi Lanza motor car. They had at least one gun, and they came in the strength of a group. All these against an innocent, feminine, and gentle lady. Her chance of escaping them that Monday morning was little to none. The gate to Sylvia's house slowly opened and she drove out. No longer within the walls of her secured home, she then became a vulnerable target. But the men, who were strong and hardened criminals, did not make a move on her at her gate. Sylvia, totally unaware of the danger, drove from her house. Without drawing suspicion, the men began trailing her in the black Mitsubishi Lanza motor car. It is not known for how long the men trailed Sylvia, but while driving along Red Hills Road at about 9:35 a.m., she stopped to purchase pastries. She got out of her Honda Accord motor car and probably was paying no attention to her surroundings when the men made their move. They snatched her, hurriedly carried her into the black Mitsubishi Lanza motor car, and sped off. It must be noted that one or more of the kidnappers jumped into Sylvia's Honda Accord motor car and drove off in it. Yes, they took her and also stole her car. Sylvia, frightened and confused, was then in their control with no chance of escaping. So why was Sylvia Edwards kidnapped? What was it that the men needed? Sylvia Edwards was not a poor woman. Born on Sunday, July 22, 1951, she studied hard in schools, and being ambitious, she achieved to the level of a successful businesswoman. At about age 20, she got married. She and her husband, Joel Edwards, had 3 daughters, Jamelia, Kimberly, and Suzette. Sylvia and her husband operated an Esso gas station at the corner of Hagley Park and Waltham Park Roads, Kingston 11. So Sylvia was a woman with money. The criminals understood this, and that's why they target her. Their criminal plot was composed of two parts. Part 1 was the kidnapping of Sylvia. Part 2 was to demand a ransom for her release. At this point, Monday, July 31, 2000, they have accomplished part 1. Part 2 was next. That same day of the kidnapping, the kidnappers took Sylvia's mobile phone and made a call to Sylvia's husband, Joel Edwards. The kidnappers tried to play smart by using a female friend called Angela Smith to talk to Sylvia's husband over the phone. When Errol, Sylvia's husband, answered the phone, he was met with the menacing voice of a female giving him a deadly choice. Pay Jamaican $200,000 for your wife's safe release, or else she will die. With the ransom now announced, Errol and the rest of the Edwards family were then cornered in a sudden predicament. The kidnapping and ransom demand were very serious. In addition, a deadline was given for the money to be paid. The Edwards family was given a short space of time to honor the ransom. The police was alerted and immediately began acting on the situation. From the time Sylvia was kidnapped, about 9:35 a.m., to about 1:30 p.m. on that Monday, the kidnappers took her to several points across the corporate area. They did not have her in one place for long. At about 3 p.m. on that same day of the kidnapping, police officers sighted the black Mitsubishi Lanza motor car in Augustown, St. Andrew, and intercept it. The occupants of the black Mitsubishi Lanza motor car were in the area waiting to collect the ransom money, and the police got information about their location. Inside the car was Angela Smith, the woman said to have made the call to Sylvia's husband, along with two males. All three of them were arrested and taken in for questioning. Under a no-nonsense interrogation, a confession was obtained from one of the three individuals, leading to the discovery of Sylvia's Honda Accord motor car abandoned in the Coopers Hill area of St. Andrew. Thankfully, no damage was done to the car. But regarding Sylvia, it was the opposite reality. On Tuesday, August 1, 2000, that's the next day after the kidnapping, police officers were led by one of the three criminals to a place near Constitution Hill, St. Andrew. The officers were led to a fresh, shallow grave at that location. Before the officers even reached the location, the focus of their efforts had already changed from the search to rescue to the search to recover. Yes, the police officers were no longer trying to rescue Sylvia. It was then a matter of recovering her body. Sylvia Edwards was treated with no dignity during her hellish final moments. She was half strangled and shot 4 times. 2 of the bullets penetrate her neck. Then a garbage hole was dug, her lifeless body thrown into it, dirt and stone then used to cover her partially nude body. Sylvia Edwards is dead, but her spirit would not rest until everyone directly involved in killing her also perished. 6 men were charged for the kidnapping and murder. 1 woman, Angela Smith, also faced charges. The 6 men were Alric Simpson, also called Tata. Who was Alric Simpson? He was at the time living in Providence Lane, Kingston 6. He was part of a gang called the Gideon Warriors Gang and was considered a ringleader in the gang. He was an extortionist, robber, and murderer. Alric Simpson Tata was sentenced to 28 years in prison for murder. And in the year 1999, he was released on parole. And after being paroled, he resumed his criminal activities. Then he got caught up in the kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards and was arrested and charged. Rohan Masters, about age 18 at the time of his arrest and charge, was an electrician from Luke Lane, Kingston. He had turned to a life of crimes from an early age and had joined the Gideon Warriors Gang, committing serious crimes. The kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards was one of them, and he was arrested and charged. Howard Lindsay, a 28-year-old craft vendor of Almontown, Kingston, and a member of the same gang, was arrested and charged. Shem Rowe, a taxi driver, was arrested and charged. Rupert Wallace, also called Killer Miller, of Garvey Mid St. Catherine, was held and charged for the kidnapping and murder. He was soon considered to have been the mastermind behind this crime. Rupert Wallace was no stranger to law enforcement. He was a ruthless gang member who showed no mercy to his victims. In the year 1990, he was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment for robbery with aggravation and was also sentenced the same year, 1990, to 5 years imprisonment for illegal possession of firearm. In the year 2000, he had served his time in prison and was released. He went straight back into criminal activities and was soon involved in Sylvia Edwards' demise. Angela Smith was not charged for murder. but she was charged with kidnapping and demanding money with menace. In her appearance in the Home Circuit Court on Friday, December 7, 2001, her bail application was denied. She was granted bail in another appearance in the Home Circuit Court. And there was the sixth suspect that the police sought to get. That suspect was the clever and powerful Joel Andem. Joel Andem became a suspect in the kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards because two men who were arrested by the police called his name, the first part of his name, in statements they gave to the police officers. Those two men were Alfred George Scott and Shem Rowe. Their statements to the police implicate Joel Andem in the kidnapping and murder. Alfred Scott and Shem Rowe agreed with government officials to testify against Joel Andem in court. They agreed to be Crown witnesses. By August 5, 2000, just few days after the murder of Sylvia, the police obtained a warrant for the arrest of Joel Andem of 11 Miles Bull Bay, St. Thomas. So who was Joel Andem? To the general public, he was known as a criminal and gang leader. That's all the public learned of him every time his name made the news. Joel Andem was born in the early 1960s to mother Enid Horton and father Kenneth Andem. He attended Rollington Town Primary School and Vauxhall High School. It was from high school years that he gradually turned to a life of crimes. In June of the year 1983, he was convicted for the first time for break-in and larceny. In 1989, he and three other men were arrested and charged for the murder of 32-year-old JLP supporter, Mr. Carol Walker. According to the information from that court case, Mr. Carol Walker was at his home in Dallas Castle, St. Andrew, when at about 3 a.m., Joel Andem and his cronies forced their way into the house, dressed in uniforms of police and soldiers. They were pretending to be police and soldiers. They took hold of Mr. Walker, tied his hands behind him, and led him away. This happened at about 3 a.m. on the morning of Friday, June 9, 1989. Then at about 10:30 a.m. that same Friday morning, Mr. Walker's body was found near a gully in the same community of Dallas Castle with 11 chop wounds inflicted by a machete. Joel Andem and his cronies were found hiding out in a house at Hayfield in St. Thomas, and they were arrested. The following year, 1990, they were found guilty and given lengthy sentences. Joel Andem got 42 years imprisonment with the possibility of parole. He got paroled in the year 1999 and simply returned to his life of committing crimes and leading a dangerous criminal gang. Then the following year, the year 2000, we are back to where we started. An arrest warrant was out for Joel Andem for the kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards. Plus, the police put his name on the island's most wanted list. Joel Andem became one of the most wanted criminals of that period. Joel Andem was also on the most wanted list for the murder of 30-year-old Lennox French, who was shot dead at his gate on Old Hope Road in St. Andrew on June 26, 2000. It was to be 4 long years, 2000 to 2004, before Joel Andem was caught by the police. But before looking at the year 2004, when Joel Andem was caught, let's look briefly at what happened during the first 2 years after Sylvia's death. Within the first 2 years after the death of Sylvia, 3 prosecution witnesses were murdered. One of them was Everett Edwards, brother-in-law to Sylvia. Yes, Everett was the older brother of Sylvia's husband. He was an employee of West Indies Glass Company and also worked at Esso gas station, the same gas station Sylvia and her husband managed. 52-year-old Everett was scheduled to give evidence in Sylvia's kidnapping and murder case on Friday, November 30, 2001. But he would never make it to court. Criminals wanted to ensure he never get to testify. So on Thursday, November 29, 2001, the day before he was to go to court, Everett was shot dead at a bus stop just minutes after he left Esso gas station where he worked as an accountant. The gunman escaped on a motorcycle. Everett Edwards, a family man, died leaving his wife Theresa, 2 sons, and a daughter. The other 2 witnesses were to testify against Joel Andem, the dangerous gang leader, but they never survived to do so. When Joel Andem was caught by the police on Wednesday, May 26, 2004, in Clarksonville, St. Anne, he had already ensured he would never be convicted. When he faced the court in April 2008 for the kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution was weakened. Director of Public Prosecution, Paula Llewellyn, was, for the most part, depending on the 2 witnesses, Alfred George Scott and Shem Rowe. They were the 2 witnesses. Paul Llewellyn was depending on them to testify against Joel Andem. But the 2 men had been murdered. Alfred George Scott and Shem Rowe were shot dead by gunmen. Paula Llewellyn had no choice but to decide not to prosecute Joel Andem due to lack of witnesses and insufficient evidence. Joel Andem was then set free of the Sylvia Edwards murder case. With charges no longer against Joel Andem for the kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards, let us look back on the 5 men who were charged and what eventually happened to them. As we can recall, the 5 men charged were Shem Rowe, Alric Simpson, Howard Lindsay, Rohan Masters, and Rupert Wallace. Shem Rowe, a taxi driver, was granted bail after he was charged for the kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards. Remember, he had agreed with the prosecution in the kidnapping and murder case to testify against Joel Andem. A few weeks after he was released on bail, Shem Rowe was shot dead on Sunday, September 30, 2001 by a gunman. Alric Simpson, also called Tata, was granted bail after he was charged for the kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards. Out on bail, he continued his criminal activities. On Friday, December 13, 2002, he went to a construction site on Bremar Avenue, Kingston 10, to collect extortion money. He was then shot dead. Howard Lindsay, Rohan Masters, and Rupert Wallace were the 3 remaining ones who faced the court trial together. On Thursday, February 4, 2003, they were all convicted of the kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards in the Home Circuit Court. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours before finding them guilty. The judge, Justice David Peter, handed down lengthy sentences on the 3 men. Rupert Wallace, businessman, was sentenced to life imprisonment with eligibility for parole after serving 45 years. Howard Lindsay was sentenced to life imprisonment with eligibility for parole after serving 25 years. Rohan Masters, an electrician, was sentenced to life imprisonment with eligibility for parole after serving 35 years. The lawyers for the 3 convicted men made submissions to the Court of Appeal to have the men's convictions overturned and their sentences set aside. The Court of Appeal accepted the applications for consideration. Months later, on Monday, December 20, 2004, the Court of Appeal overturned the conviction of Howard Lindsay and entered a verdict of acquittal, setting Howard Lindsay free to go home. Regarding Rohan Masters and Rupert Wallace, the Court of Appeal ordered a retrial. For the retrial, Rohan Masters and Rupert Wallace were each granted new bail with new conditions. Rupert Wallace, who used to live in St. Catherine, began living in St. Thomas. The retrial began on March 16, 2009. The following year, 2010, Rupert Wallace came to a tragical end. On Friday, February 26, 2010, the 51-year-old Rupert Wallace, also called Killer Miller, was shot multiple times by police officers in the Stanton housing scheme near Morant Bay in St. Thomas. As usual, the police claimed it was a shootout. Following the death of Rupert Wallace, the retrial had only one accused still alive to appear in court. His name, Rohan Masters. From 2010, after the death of Rupert Wallace, the retrial in the kidnapping and murder of Sylvia Edwards dragged on and on for years, with the prosecution side facing all sorts of difficulties. The prosecution had lost all their witnesses. The court system struggled with a backlog of cases, and a range of issues made the outcome of the retrial look bleak. The big question on the minds of many was, could Rohan Masters be convicted in the retrial? That question was never answered because Rohan Masters became the final tragedy. On Friday, February 2, 2018, Rohan Masters was in the vicinity of Solarfield Road in Southeast St. Andrew when he was shot dead by a gunman. With Rohan Masters dead, the Sylvia Edwards kidnapping and murder court case came to an end. And it came to an end satisfactorily because the spirit of Sylvia was able to rest, knowing that the men directly involved in killing her have also perished. The funeral for Sylvia Evadne Edwards was held on Saturday, August 12, 2000 at St. Richard's Catholic Church on Red Hills Road, St. Andrew. Afterwards, her body was buried at Dovecot Memorial Park in St. Catherine.